You ever had one of them nights where you're sure you've seen something you weren't supposed to? Yeah, this is one of them stories. Picture this. A quiet, lonely road just after midnight. I had a few too many at the bar and I'd left my cell phone back at the motel. So, I didn't have nobody to come pick me up. Now, what happened next? Well, let's just say, it still keeps me up at night. All alcoholics know, at some point a thing you love will kill you. It's a dangerous romance, a razor-thin line between logic and lust. This is something I have struggled with and have blamed on my father my entire life. Because at least that way, I had an excuse to keep doing it. If this curse was handed down to me, I'm a victim. I don't have to think about how much I enjoy destroying myself because it was inevitable. His true love claimed him when I was 16, after he drove his truck through the front of our house, blaring sirens in hot pursuit. Rather than face another DUI, he decided to try and beat the cops back to our house. The last things that went through his head were, "See, I told you I could make it back." Then windshield glass, and finally, I'd assume, the family photos that hung on the wall over the couch. Wearing a seatbelt would have saved him, but we were thankful he had it. We wouldn't have been able to afford his legal fees. That image, the front of his work truck, lighting up my mangled father's corpse, draining into the carpet where I watched cartoons and ate cereal. It still comes to me whenever I see the red and blue police lights at night. I have never drunk and driven, though there have been many times I've been tempted out of convenience or shame. However, this did not stop my love affair. No, it just gave it purpose. Now, my desire was justified by genetics and tragedy, and you can bet I wallowed in it. I lied, I begged, and disappointed myself all the way to this point. Divorced, unemployable, and medium sober, sitting at a rundown motel desk and asking myself, what just happened? Because I just got a ride home from the bar, and my father was the DD. As I said, luck hasn't always been on my side as of late. I've been living hand-to-mouth on the alimony my ex-wife pays for at least a year. That is, until my cousin called and told me he had a job lined up for me. I just needed to get there and be sober. I packed up, recycled all the empties in my Safari for gas money, and made a beeline for the coast. I was making good time, so I decided to stop for a bit at the Gilded Feather and play a few hands of blackjack. Before you judge, I only had a beer, which was pretty impressive considering I went on a run that had me walking out with over $500 of the tribe's money. Happiness hadn't felt this crisp to me in a long time. I was proud of myself for waving off the waitress, then she came to freshen me up. This is a new start. Maybe I can finally turn this boat around. The only road to the coast is a 2-lane highway over the mountain pass. If I'd been driving a Miata instead of a busted van from the 90s, that sounded like a destruction derby car, I'd imagine it would have been fun, scenic affair. All I could think about was what would happen to me if she had dropped dead and left me walking through a country that has murals of Bigfoot on the side of their grocery store. I had no issues pulling into a tiny town just before nightfall, and I didn't want to risk my luck turning on the other side of the mountain. Then, remembering the crash burning a hole in my pocket, I sent a text to my cousin telling him I'd be there first thing in the morning, and rented a room for the night. The only place to eat was a bar about a mile outside of town. The plan was to leave at 5 a.m. and drive the last 75 miles or so to make my first day of work. I wanted to be clear-headed tomorrow morning, so I pinky promised myself that I wouldn't drink too much. The drive over to the aptly named Consumption Junction took 5 minutes. Hey, a man has to eat. It couldn't be helped that the only restaurant had a bar. The locals were friendly, as I'd imagine they don't often get new drinking buddies here. The crowd was my type. Barflies that stare into the glass of whatever their favorite well liquor is and chase it down with a beer back. Our livers have no time for mixers, and sugar will give us diabetes. Eventually, the remaining 4 of us, who had bonded over shots and rock and roll bands from our past, were informed it was closing time. My billfold was filled with 50s and scribbled on pieces of napkins with phone numbers of people I would never speak to again. It was then that I began to recognize that familiar feeling of disappointment, when it becomes apparent that your actions and your intentions differ. I'd lost count on my drinks. I couldn't drive. And all of my shit was back at the motel too, so I couldn't just sleep here and take off in a few hours. My well-laid plan had been fucked by mice. This, surprisingly, is where I began to question my own memories. Agonizingly, I pondered my options and decided the valiant, noble thing to do would be walk the mile back to the room, grab my stuff, and walk back to the van. Hopefully, I will have enough time to sober up and be at work on time. My cousin had stuck his neck out for me, and I had swore I was deserving of this risk. It wasn't the worst situation I had found myself in by a long shot, nor would it be the first time I'd gone to work after an all-nighter. In hindsight, I should have just slept in the van, picked up my clothes on the way out the town. What can I say? I was shit-faced. People take for granted the notion of streetlights. I'd imagine it's not too often that modern folk find themselves outside at night, in a place only lit by the moon. The pale light plays tricks on your mind. I felt this truth more and more as I drunkenly ambled down the highway at 2:30 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. I was a lonely soul, and I felt it. My right foot kept finding those loose rocks, and I kept finding myself in a muddy ditch. Within a half hour of my trek, I had made it around the first bend in the road. I could not see any lights off in the distance. The only hint of civilization was the existence of the highway that kept wandering out from under my legs. I was completely soaked by the next bend, after falling face first into the stinkiest pool of water in existence. In that moment, I was thankful for the darkness, as I would rather keep the mystery of what I was swimming in alive, instead of knowing the foulness of its contents. The realization I had left my phone in the van to charge hit me about an hour into my journey. A complete guess, as I am thoroughly convinced I had walked for 3 hours at least. I remember sitting on the side of the road for a while to cry. The roller coaster of emotions became too much for me. My loneliness was so complete, as there would be no one for me to call for help, even if I had thought to bring it. I remember wishing someone drive by and take pity on me. I just needed to get to my room and take a shower. I would be a better man then. In the distance ahead of me, a light appeared, blinding in the blackness that my eyes were so accustomed to. Angelic, divine. I was saved. The prayer of a drunk answered. So I yelled out in the dark. I yelled for salvation, signaled with earnest, as this Titanic survivor had glimpsed the Carpathia and would never be left behind. The high-pitched whine of an old transmission downshifting was music to my ears. A Ford Ranger from the 70s with a caved-in front end pulled up alongside me. I was glad for the state of it, as I would have to feel so bad for my muddiness. It was dark in the cab, so my savior remained a mystery to me. When I turned to put on my seatbelt, it became apparent that there was none. Thank you so much. I've been out here forever, I said honestly. The only reply came from the truck as it began to lurch forward slowly. The dark man shifting smoothly without using the clutch, like a truck driver from the past. My dad had a truck just like this. I remember saying to him, ignored again, as the man just continued to pick up speed, shifting. His Ranger didn't have seatbelts either, I said, finishing my thought about how useful they would have been in my head. That bar is a lot farther from town than what it looks. It took me 5 or so minutes to get there in my van, but I've been walking for hours. I was startled by his voice. "You come from the bar?" "Yeah, from consumption." A little chuckle from the night's festivities regarding its origin blossoming in my brain now that fear had gone to bed. It was a noise he made, shifting and accelerating. I began to notice the trees whipping past us now. I wasn't sure what gear we were in, as the speedometer read 75. The fear was awake, and I wished to be back in my sneaky puddle again. "You must know these roads well, like the back of your hand," I said, trying to tactfully broach the subject of our unbelievable speed. I may have been drunk, but I'm a professional, and even incapacitated, I would have realized there was no way he could be making these corners without braking. All I could do was hold on as this madman pressed harder on the gas pedal and changed gear. "Hey man, this isn't cool. What the hell are you doing?" He pressed on, unaffected by my obvious distress. You smell like liquor, son." "Well, yeah. I was at the bar, man. Slow down." "They buy you drinks?" He spat into the steering wheel. "Did you take liquor from them in there?" The sudden change from the shadowed man caused me to piss his seat. I was absolutely terrified and drunk and hurtling down a 2-lane mountain road with a complete stranger. I can remember looking into his face, straining to see him, only finding darkness. It was as if he wore a black hole as a mask. I recognized the rage. I had worked my entire life to drink away its place in my childhood. "Is this what you wish for your memory? Answer me, boy." He shifted again. "Look into yourself. Is there anyone left to remember you? When this truck stops, will there be anyone to make sure you're put to rest?" He screamed into the cab of the truck and continued shifting, his left hand furiously moving back and forth on the wheel, guiding us, though it felt like the truck was on rails. There were no longer trees flying by, as now the entirety of our surroundings had become a blur outside the truck. My hands, searching for a solid place to brace, moved to his dashboard, pleading for security. "Consumption leads to rot," he bellowed. "All dead things rot." I crunched something in my clasping hands and pulled it to my face, only to recognize my own countenance staring back at me. It was a faded picture of me and my family, standing outside our house, all waving and smiling for the camera. I looked at the man's face and only saw my imagination. "Glory to those that know their place. They know they are a burden on those they love, and look to pay that debt." Dad? This picture was real. I could feel it in my hands. Behind those waving, smiling faces is a broken home. Behind that broken family would lay a crumbling house. The overalls, stained in a familiar pattern. Those hands, gnarled into clubs from work, were used to teach me better. I could smell Copenhagen and beer in the cab of the truck, body odor overpowering the Old Spice. I knew where I was. I knew who I was riding with. I know where we're going, as I had visited often in my nightmares. And I began yelling, "You're right. Like father, like son, huh? I thought that just because I never drunk and drove, I was better than you. That's because I never had kids and beat them. That way we weren't the same. Yet here we are. Here we are alone and hurtling drunk down a road in your truck. You win. Are you happy, Dad? Just like old times. Except this time, I get to be drunk too." My throat burned along my eyes. Tears and sweat and alcohol came out of me as I unloaded everything that I hid from myself onto the man that had left me behind. I screamed, and I screamed, and I screamed. And he facelessly shifted and swerved in anticipation and sheer hysteria. I began baiting him. "That spot looks good right there. Come on. Come on, any tree will do. Just make sure it's solid. I don't want to limp away from this, Dad." Reaching under the seat, I found the emergency beer I was looking for. The one that I knew from experience would be there. "Oh, look at you, Pops. Still a man after your own heart." As I cracked it open, worms began to flow out of the can. They began to burrow into my legs, righteous agony, driving out of my hysteria, and replacing it with raw, unadulterated horror. "Oh my God, Dad, please help me." A broken child swatting at something wicked and looking for their parent's salvation. "I need you to save me." "There's nothing to save. You look to fill your hollowness with the vice and sin. What would be left for you? You know what you are. And drink yourself into oblivion and hide from it." I could no longer hear the engine. It was just my father's voice and the tunnel of our collective fury. We, together, hurtled down a road toward our destination, one already knowing the way, the other waiting to see how to get there. After looking into the face of the monster driving my father's truck again, gazing deep into the blackness, I closed my eyes and accepted my fate. I woke up in a gully, completely soaked and disoriented, and about 15 feet off the shoulder of the highway. I had been laying there for a while, as my hands were pruny from the water, and I was dreadfully cold. It wasn't until I made it back to my motel room and stripped naked in front of the mirror did I see the true extent of my injuries, though I had felt them on the way. Black and blue covered my shoulders and chest, all decorated with 1,000 little cuts, my thighs ravaged by little pin-sized holes oozing. My face got it the worst, as both my eyes were almost swollen shut, and there was this massive gash across my forehead. If I didn't know any better, I'd suggest I went through someone's windshield. Of course, that's ridiculous. There was no accident anywhere near where I woke up. Not that I looked very hard, admittedly. Call it a hunch when I walked back to get my van. I won't see any wrecks being hauled off. They cleaned it up a long time ago. I watched them in my pajamas doing it. The sun is coming up, and I'm going to miss my first day of work. Oh well. That bridge was stupidly built of flammable material anyways. But I wanted to sit and top this all out before I can shower and sleep away this nightmare. It's more likely than anything I fell down during my journey home and tried to break the fall with my face. The hill I had to climb up to get back on the tarmac was so steep. It took a few tries and there are plenty of rocks for me to find. These visions are so vivid. They feel so real. I hadn't thought of the inside of this truck in so long. The beer under the seat was something my brain would have to dig deep in the files in order for it to turn against me. This is far beyond rock bottom, and deep into the bedrock separating our realm from hell. That black hole face looked into me and was disgusted. Real or not, it's time for change. If there is anyone out there that has experienced something like this, please let me know. Obviously, anyone I tell will dismiss it because of my disease, because of my reputation. So, I post this for all of you who don't know me to see if all of this was a terrible power nap after another night of drinking. I think I'll use this little shard of broken glass I found in my hair as a reminder. Thanks, Dad, for helping me the only way you knew how.